As you may or may not know, here at the MotoIQ garage, we're not only doing work for our own project cars, but we're also taking in customer work. For example, today we're working on this really nice Mitsubishi Evo 9 RS. We've already worked on it in the past, and you've seen the article on MotoIQ already, where we actually upgraded the rear subframe to the Magnus Racing's Tubular subframe. But today we're going to be working in the front of the car on the front subframe. On top of that, we're going to be installing the north and south bar, east and west bar that also comes from Magnus Racing, and a couple more doodads, like for example, all 4 Giro-Disc upgrades on this car, also to lose some weight. So today we're going to be installing the parts, walking you through the parts, going over some technical aspects of them, as well as taking a test drive down the road and letting you know what we think of this. So without further ado, let's get started. So here's the majorities of today's project. Now we have the Magnus Racing tubular subframe, as well as the 2 supporting bars, and we have the stock parts here to kind of show you the weight differences and why it is that we're doing this. The customer already had the east and west tie bar, which actually ties in the 2 front control arms, correct?
Yep.
And he already had this piece, but just to go with the motif of the Magnus Racing, he got that one from Magnus as well. So let's get started. We're gonna first start by weighing the stock piece. So we'll zero out our scale. Let's see what we got here. Bah, bah, bah. What the hell?
You're balancing challenged.
All right, grand total 39 pounds, 13.6 ounces.
Let's call it 40 pounds.
All right, fair enough.
So let's talk about the stock parts here. Now this Cusco brace is an aftermarket brace. It doesn't come with the car. Ties in the lower control arms, the front mounting point, really stiffens things up. Actually attaches to the middle part of the cross members, so not only does it attach across, but it attaches in the middle. So this thing is actually pretty handy, but it is an aftermarket part, but we're going to be replacing it with a different one.
Now, why would we want to tie in the front lower control arms?
Oh, well, there's like a lot of force going on, so when you're under cornering the tires, all the lateral load goes right into the control arm, and it wants to flex the mounting point. So this ties it in solid.
Okay.
Your toe and camber.
It's the mounting point that we're trying to prevent from flexing. Gotcha.
And we're looking at your north-south bar here. It's pretty heavy. The Mitsubishi factory stamps this out of mild steel, so it goes in a big die. It goes Kawam. It's probably robotically welded. Pretty strong. They can make these all day for really cheap. You can see all the robotic spot welds around here. Pretty strong for the weight, but it is heavy. You have your motor mount right here, and it's a rubber bushing, but you see how it's all cut out for maximum flex. This is good for absorbing vibrations and drivetrain shock. Like let's say you really launch the car, this thing's probably going to flex about a ½ inch and let the engine really move. And that could actually contribute to more drivetrain shock, and it also can make shifting difficult when the engine's moving around. So this is a pretty good part, but it's heavy, and it's mostly, the mount's designed for,
for street driving or just ultimate comfort.
And no vibrations when you're idling, that kind of stuff. The cross member here is a similar deal. Like you can see it's made out of several stampings. So instead of like a lot of hand fabrication, it's like probably about 6 or 7 stampings that are just Kawammed out hydraulically. Then they're just loaded in the fixture and robotically welded. So these welds get the job done. You see how they're all ugly?
Yeah. But like you said, you can get it, knock it out quick and cheap. I guess we can get started on weighing the aftermarket parts. Let's see, we're at 0.
Back down, okay.
Oh, that by itself is 17 pounds. That puts us at 21.14 ounces. That's 24 and 16 now, so call it 25 pounds total.
So we're saving 15 pounds by going to the
Yeah.
Magnus stuff.
And from the front of the car too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can clearly tell just the additional work that went into this piece. And you're just voiding out any additional beef that you don't really need.
So this part is made out of tubular chromoly steel. So chromoly is steel with molybdenum and chromium in it. So it's twice as strong as regular mild steel like this per weight. Pound per pound, it's twice as strong. It's tubular in construction and it's TIG welded. Now this, in the axis that's going to be bolted on the car, is probably just as strong as this, even though it's a lot lighter. And stiffness-wise, it could be a little bit less, but that's probably why this bar is a little bit beefier than the Cusco one. The north-south bar is much, much lighter.
And that incorporates...
like a polyurethane bushing, so the motor's not going to move around as much. Practical stiffness is about the same, 15 pounds less weight, and shoot, it looks a lot cooler, right? And I don't see any disadvantage to it at all. And maybe when you incorporate this is a lot beefier than the Cusco part, you probably actually pick up stiffness.
It'll be interesting to see with that increased stiffness if we pick up a ton more NVH and how uncomfortable it'll be, if at all.
Well,
once we test drive it later.
I think we are going to pick up NVH just because look at the motor mount. It's like hard urethane. It's really small, so there's hardly any compliance in there. Yeah. And yeah, I mean,
but we'll see if it's unlivable or
yeah. And I think that's going to go a long way to reducing wheel hop and improving shifting.
All right. Back under the car, like we mentioned, this car's already been to our shop, and when we installed the rear subframe, so you can see we have the new rear subframe on the car. Had to make a custom rear mount for the exhaust because this was actually incorporated into the stock subframe before, and as well as some modifications to where the drain plug goes for the rear diff, as it didn't really have that from Magnus. So keep that in mind if you install this on your street car or even race car, that you need it to maintain the rear diff. So keep that in mind if you have one yourself.
You have the option of using the factory eccentrics here, and you see how there's slots, and then you can adjust the camber through here. But you also have all these different alternative mounting holes. So if you're having like a spherical bearing and you have an adjustable lower arm, so your adjustment's in the arm, you could actually use different mounting holes. So what you could do is, you can adjust the arm really long, and then that gives you a faster camber curve because you're changing the proportion of the arm length from top to bottom, so you get more camber gain under roll. So that helps you in cornering. Or you can adjust the arm really short and use one of these alternative holes, and that makes the top and bottom equal, so when the car squats, the tire goes more up and down and it doesn't camber out and lose contact.
So you're just no longer using this adjustment here, now you're just using these as fixed points, and then you make your adjustment with whatever arm you have.
And let's say your car is really slammed, you can use these upper holes to correct your roll center. Yeah, and
I honestly thought they were just there to save weight.
No, they're actually alternative mounting points. The other thing too is if the car is low and you raise this thing up, it also reduces your anti-squat, so that could help your dig out of the corners and help your dig on launch. So yeah, you get the additional flexibility of having extra mounts, so you can do some advanced suspension tuning.
We also installed these VWR racing arms. I'm kind of doing some research on them and not hearing the best of things, have we?
Yeah, like I guess like on the internet, there's like all kinds of rumors that these aren't the greatest parts.
Yeah. So far, the customer hasn't had any issues, but we'll kind of keep you guys posted on this. We're going to be recommending to the customer to potentially get some different arms.
I mean, what I don't like from an engineering standpoint is you have the shank on the heim joint here, and you have this big extension that's kind of like a extension of the heim joint, and then it puts like a lot of shear load on this threaded area.
Okay.
So this is a big moment arm to like tweak on this threaded area, so I think it's a weak spot. Like I would rather see the arm be a lot longer and have the heim joint screw right into the arm. They were saying that these things have broken, and I don't even think they sell these anymore.
Okay. I believe when we did the original install of the arms, we did compare the weights, and it wasn't a huge difference. I think it was only like maybe a pound or pound and a half per arm. So.
Well, the stock ones are forged aluminum, so they're
Yeah.
not that bad. And they have steel sealed sphericals in there, so they're not bad parts actually.
Okay.
So we're looking at the subframe. Now the stock Evo subframe is actually a pretty cool piece. It's a big aluminum casting, and it's actually pretty light. Mitsubishi spent a lot of money to make a cool rear subframe, and then they put a super heavy front one in a car that's really front heavy.
Oh, that's right. We noticed that the majority of the weight came from the mustache
Yeah.
piece. That's where you saved the majority of the weight.
So I don't understand Mitsubishi's thinking. They have a car that's 60-40 weight distribution. It has a lot of weight in the front, but they put a heavy old cross member,
Piece in the front.
and they spent a lot of money building like a trick aluminum rear one, but the back of the car is light.
They should have put all their time into designing that one, right? To
Right.
balance things out.
And then they make this aluminum subframe, and they use a big, heavy cast iron thing to hold up the differential, what they call the mustache bar.
Yeah.
And that mustache bar is super heavy, so it's like I don't know what they're thinking.
I do remember that, man. Yeah, because that's where all the weight was, the majority of it, which is what this takes care of.
So on this, you have your tubular chrome moly subframe, which is just like the front. 4130 TIG welds, really nice. The mustache bar is integral into the subframe, and the differential bolts rigidly into the subframe, so it's actually part of the subframe structure that makes it really stiff and really strong. Also, the diff doesn't like move, and when you launch and shift hard, like it can't start whipping around and cause drivetrain shock. I think this is a good thing. The disadvantage is it probably has more vibration than NVH, and I think the customer was mentioning that he could feel some vibration, right?
He was mentioning some noises in the rear of the car,
Yeah, I hear no weird noises.
and we're still trying to deduce whether they're coming from potentially the brakes or if it's just NVH that he's hearing.
Well, when you get rid of all the bushings, have a rigid structure, and you have the differential mounted solidly in the solid subframe, and bearings and everything, every bit of noise that is
Transferred into
it's going to transfer into the cabin. So it's like a race car. So, if you like the quite refined ride,
These parts aren't for you.
yeah. If you want like the ultimate in performance and you like to get all the weight out of your car, this is the way to go. Or if your car is a track-driven only car, this is the way to go.
Now, real quick question on the NVH thing. Without them being bushings or the diff and the subframe mount now, would we say that now everything's being transferred to the subframe mounting points now? So
And this is like a big echo chamber up in here, the trunk and all
Okay.
that. So it actually probably amplifies any noises and vibrations.
I do also remember that the customer wanted us to use titanium hardware for the subframe bolts. With there being that much shock going into the subframe bolts, is it the best of ideas to be using the titanium hardware?
Like for automotive use, I don't like replacing the OEM bolts with titanium. A lot of it is because everybody thinks titanium's super strong, right? But a lot of these suspension bolts are grade 10 bolts, and they're actually high-strength steel, and they're actually pretty damn strong. Now you get titanium. Titanium isn't the wonder metal, super strong, super bulletproof Iron Man thing that you think it is. The thing about titanium is it's as strong as mild steel. Now that's like the lowest grade of steel, basically. But it's
A fraction of the weight.
a fraction of the weight. It only weighs like a little bit more than aluminum. and it's as strong as weak steel. So basically, you're replacing high-strength bolts with like a weak bolt. And
Yes, you're losing a little bit of weight, but is it really worth it?
Yeah.
Especially and even more so in this situation where now this is really taking and absorbing all of the shock.
right, and you know, like your subframe bolts, they absorb all the torque the motor makes. You know, like when you wind it up and dump the clutch when you launch the car, they're taking all that shock load. They're taking all the suspension load, all the load that the tires can create.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason why Mitsubishi designed it with that size of bolt and then had grade 10 hardware. And if you're replacing it with something half as strong to save probably at the best 3 or 4 pounds, it's just not worth it.
Now, just for argument's sake, would you, from your engineering point of view, would it be something that just becomes a maintenance item now, those bolts, or is it something you just shouldn't run?
I just wouldn't run
Just
it.
wouldn't run it.
Because, like, you know, they could be yielding, and if you're nut-and-bolting the car and giving it a tug, the torque is going up and up maybe.
Okay.
And then you're
Especially-
getting close to the yield point. That's probably no bueno. Now, from an engineering standpoint, if I was going to use titanium hardware, I would design the hardware with the titanium strength in mind. So, like, I would specify like a larger, maybe a hollow bolt or something like that.
Or even if you had to add additional mounting points to whatever
Yeah,
piece
or-
is holding it, just to spread the load.
Spread the load
to
out.
the right.
So
amount.
when you design around titanium, you know, it's a fine
Pitching.
metal, but something that was designed to be a different alloy, you don't want to replace it with titanium unless, you know, you have a lot of careful consideration.
And again, we're not saying titanium's crap. We're just saying in the right application. You have to make sure you're using the right parts in the right application. Onto the rear disc. As you can see, we have upgraded to the Giro-Disc or Giro-Disc, depending on how you want to say it, I
If you're
guess.
Greek or not.
Right? Depending how you like your gyros. Now, the cool thing about these is that you could remove the rings if you wanted to. So what we ended up doing was cryo-treating actually the friction areas.
And CTP Cryogenics did our treating.
Absolutely, yes. Right here in Torrance, they're very local to us. And cryo-treating is an amazing process, especially if you're trying to really prolong the longevity of some of your parts and strength as well, right?
Yeah, and stress relief. And when it comes to rotors, it's supposed to increase the rotor life by 50% at least. So,
snap.
yeah, we're kind of eager to see. This is the first set of rotors we've actually cryo-treated.
By those
so-
guys, yeah. Now, I think I also heard that you can cryo-treat your brake pads as well?
You can. I think the benefits of cryo-treated brake pads only work if your pads have a high metallic content. I'm not 100% expert
That would
on
make sense. So the more organic content they would have, the less effect
the less
they
it would do.
have,
It'd be
because-
like cryo-treating cardboard,
yeah,
right?
like what's the point of that? Okay. One thing we did notice, even though the disc did fit on here okay, it was basically a bolt-on part. These little edges that hold the disc onto the hat, these little extra red pieces here, they were touching the rear brake pad. So we had to trim down the rear brake pad a little bit. It's not a big deal. It's really just the mounting plate, none of the friction surface of the pad. But it's something to keep in mind also, at least for the customer to keep in mind next time he does a brake pad change, that he is going to have to clearance those or they're going to be hitting these.
The other cool thing is the Evo, the parking brake is a drum that's integral into the
Into
rotor.
the back area of the rotor.
Yeah, and these actually have the lightweight alloy hat, but they still accommodate the drum.
So you don't lose your
Yeah, you still
parking
have a
brake.
parking brake. I mean, with it's aluminum, so you can't do like e-brake initiation all day, but it will hold the car on the grade, and it will stop you in an emergency.
So cool. Let's get out of Howard's way and let him get to work. So our techs, Howard and Steve, are done with our car. Not only have they installed this front subframe, done the modifications it needed to do, but we've also string aligned the car. We're going to kind of take you through the steps of what we've done here. The Magnus subframe did kind of relatively bolt on. It did bolt on, but the only things that are missing are for street cars. So some of the provisions for, let's say, your exhaust hangers here, we had to fabricate those into the subframe. The only other little thing there on the top of your subframe, there's a little thing that holds the power steering line. We had to create a bracket for that. And then finally, the super awesome zip tie action over here. And that's simply because the clip that's supposed to go on there goes on the stock subframe. It's not there on this tubular subframe. But other than that, everything went relatively smooth. Mike, give us some knowledge on this subframe.
So, what the east-west bar does is super apparent once the thing's on the car. So you see how the front of the lower control arm mounts kind of hang off into space?
Oh yeah, like this front tool area here.
Yeah, and it's kind of cantilevered out.
Yeah.
And like remember from our Nissan racing days, that's what our cars were like too. So we had to fabricate bars to support the upper control arm because it's just like hanging.
Mm-hmm.
So what this does is it actually triangulates that in and supports the front of the lower control arm mount, ties it together, ties it into the north-south bar. So that really increases the stiffness in the front.
Okay.
And in that respect, it's probably better than stock. I mean, this is a pretty beefy, stiff bar.
And this is the piece that took place of the Cusco bar you had, right?
Yeah, right. The Cusco bar, remember, was a lot thinner. And
Yep.
But,
And I'm sure it wasn't designed to even triangulate into the north-south bar.
it actually had the tab to triangulate into
okay.
the factory thing, but it was like substantially less beefy than this guy.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so you could see like how this thing is actually pretty well braced, and all the loads are, fed directly into the tubes. So I think this thing is actually really strong for this application. Like you're not giving up any kind of strength, by getting rid of all the weight.
So you were taking notes on this subframe here and the weight savings that we got. So how much did we save just on the front subframe?
A little bit more than 15 pounds just by going to all this stuff.
Okay.
I mean, right off the front of the car where it hurts the weight. Evos are front heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So 15 pounds. The motor is kind of held more firmly with this new mount and not really giving up any strength. And I think it's a win-win situation here.
Awesome. Cool.
What's really impressive is, we got rid of a little bit more than 75 pounds from this car.
Oh, total with the rear, front subframe, and rotor.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty amazing. And, that's going to make actually a feelable difference.
Now, we did talk to the customer about his driving style and how he wanted the car set up.
Yeah, so we did a four-wheel alignment. He's basically like in the straight line, and he does a little bit of cornering, but he doesn't specifically do that. So what we kind of did is we just did a basic street alignment. We didn't get crazy with negative camber or anything. At the current point, like this car isn't super adjustable because the suspension is stock to a large degree. But what we did is, ran minimum toe in the front, a little bit of toe in the rear. Tried to set the rear tires straight up so you can launch good.
Okay.
Kind of a simple alignment.
Straight up as far as camber, and then the rear a little toe, you said?
Yeah, a little bit of toe.
Okay.
He's going to get more into suspension later, and then we can probably more do an aggressive, more specific alignment.
Gotcha.
But he can drive around, his tires won't wear out, and it's probably going to turn in a little bit better than it did stock, and it'll launch a little better too.
And do keep that in mind, guys. I mean, basically, when you're really trying to get your car set up right and really do a proper alignment, it has to be for your driving style. If 95% of the time you're driving on the freeway, there's no point in having a road race setup where you have an 1/8 inch toe out, a lot of negative camber. That's going to feel great around the twisties, but you're going to be killing your tire life. But now, if that's not an issue for you, you don't have a problem, going through tires all the time, then by all means, knock yourself out. But do keep that in mind. The more aggressive your alignment gets, yes, it'll perform better, but it's probably at the expense of tire wear.
Some of the other things too is that a road racing specific alignment it's going to hunt around more on the freeway. It's going to be crown sensitive, so it's going to want to follow the crown.
Gotcha.
So you can't like drive around like no-handed, and it's going to tram line and follow the rain grooves and follow cracks a little more.
Okay.
I mean, it's not going to be crazy, but if you're super fussy,
About just making your wheel being super straight all the time.
yeah, you know, like how some people all go, "Oh, no-handed, that's a good alignment," and but you know, like a real like performance road race alignment's going to be a little bit wandery, and you know, so that's why you have to kind of do the alignment per the customer's needs, and then you're going to have to manage the expectations because it's a little bit of a trade-off.
Yep. So cars and lines, subframes are in. Now the one thing is, let's see how this actually performs and behaves on the street. Not necessarily performance-wise. We know it's better. We've taken weight off the car. But how does it feel on the road? Are we going to have a lot of more NVH? Is it manageable? So we're going to take this car on a little bit of a spin and report back.
Yeah, that's the main thing. I mean, no doubt this is going to help performance, but you know, we're really curious about how bad the vibration's going to be, because we took out a lot of rubber,
Exactly.
replaced it with solid.
Kind of like old Integra there, doesn't get driven because it's no longer quite refined.
Yeah.
We're a little older now, and our tastes aren't the way they used to be when we were in our teens or early 20s, I guess.
But not all our customers are old, so.
It doesn't matter. We'll be back. I concur. I like your shit.
And that little bit of extra noise, I would rather have like a smoother drivetrain than you know, have total more silence. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, this thing feels solid. You know what? I know it's all-wheel drive and turbo, and that is super different than the SCR, but it does feel a lot like it.
Yeah, that's what I've always liked about the SCRs. They feel really good, and all the control positioning and all that's really good.
Yeah, so overall, I think this is a complete win-win-win situation. We've dropped a ton of weight. The car feels better. Like you said, that drivetrain snatchiness is gone, which I can see what you're saying. And there's really no downside. I mean, we haven't heard or felt the downside to this at all. No weird clunks, no weird noises.
A little bit more diff noise, but really, if that bothers you, then I don't know.
Yeah. So if you're in the market to lose some weight from your Evo, definitely look at the Magnus Motorsport rear and front subframes. 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in my Evo now.
Oh, and let's not even forget the gyro or gyro disc that we put on here. No funky noises from that either.
Yeah, no rattles or anything.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of those floating rotors make noise.
Exactly, man. That's what I was afraid of. That we're gonna lose some of the civility or daily drivability of this thing, but nothing at all. So, hope you guys liked the video. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Let me pay attention while I'm driving here. And we will see you guys next time. And remember, if you want us to work on your own car, whether you're looking for engine builds, suspension, brakes, alignment setup, we can take care of you guys. So go to our homepage, top of the left side of the homepage, MotoIQ Garage Services. Submit your request. We'll be more than happy to help you guys. See you in the next video.
See you later.